Ever since the advent of desktop publishing, desktop presentations, multimedia, the whole graphics craze, it's no longer good enough just to print text on your computer. There is a font fetish now, and unless you know your Helvetica from your Times Roman, you're just out of it. The secret, of course, is to get your computer, your software, and your printer to all speak the same language so you can do this kind of stuff. Today, we take a look at the fascinating but sometimes frustrating world of fonts on this edition of the Computer Chronicles.
Computer Chronicles is made possible in part by Central Point Software, suppliers of utilities software, including disk backup, data recovery, file and desktop management, and virus protection. Central Point Software, making computing safer, simpler, faster. Additional funding is provided by the Software Publishers Association, which reminds you it's a federal offense to copy software, and by PC Connection and Mac Connection, and by Byte Magazine and Bix.
Welcome to the Computer Chronicles. I'm Stewart Cheifet, and with me this week is Jan Lewis. Jan, what we have on the computer here is a new product from Bitstream called Facelift, which is a kind of utility running inside Legacy, which is WordStar's new word processor that runs under Windows, if you can follow all that. What I want to show you about Facelift is pretty neat. What it lets you do is in real time, on the fly, change fonts and lots of other attributes in a document. For example, in this little desktop publishing document, I decide that's a little too boring, that kind of Roman font on there in Arlene's. I can go in here very quickly, say pick out brush script, and boom, there it is. What's nice about Legacy, by the way, is I can go into here and again get a reduced view and really get an entire WYSIWYG view of what my finished document is, including all the font changes, type sizes, and so on and so forth. It seems these days there is almost a kind of font fetish out there. I mean, you can have people sitting around an office for hours arguing over fonts and typefaces and point sizes and that kind of stuff. Has McLuhan sort of gotten into the printed communication field now where the medium is becoming more important than the message?
Well, I don't think it's more important than the message. However, if you stop and think about it, the fonts and what it's going to look like, that's sort of the first impression. And first impressions are lasting impressions. So it is the first thing you see. On the other hand, the content obviously has to be there. But I think the most significant thing is that the choices of font technologies are so massive today that is extremely confusing. Do you get something like Facelift or Adobe Type Manager that lets you do any size you want on the fly? Do you get something that's bitmapped? Do you need PostScript? It even impinges on what printer do I get? You know, a couple of years ago, you had to get a PostScript printer. What do I do now? Can I save money by doing it a different way? So it's a very confusing field nowadays.
That's why we're doing the show, Jan. Today we'll take a look at several major new products that bring new power to the computer user who wants full control over the appearance of a document, and we'll see the latest hardware and software solutions from Hewlett-Packard, Apple, and Adobe. Now, with so much confusion out there over font formats and types and standards, it's not surprising that there's a demand for a product that can convert and modify different font types into one standard format. That product is called FontMonger. Here's a report on how it works.
A small Northern California company has begun shipping a software product its creators say will revolutionize the font industry. Called FontMonger, the program lets the Macintosh user freely convert between PostScript Type 1, Type 3, and TrueType fonts. But that's only 1/3 of what the software can do.
FontMonger combines elements of perhaps 4 or 5 different software packages into one simple, elegant, easy-to-use application. It's been designed so that people can work with fractions, they can work with their characters, or do their conversions without leaving the program. This level of ease of use, coupled with the power, has not existed in any other software package to date.
Remapping the keyboard using FontMonger is straightforward. Small caps from an existing typeface can be created by selecting the height and width proportions from the menu. Users can also make inferior or superior characters for scientific equations. The composite characters can then be installed into a font. Characters from various type families can also be joined into one font. FontMonger lets the user also access foreign character accents and currency symbols. But this increase in font choice and styles brings with it a few drawbacks for those who send their files to an outside service bureau.
It will complicate matters for people like service bureaus, because people will have to bring their fonts into the service bureau each time they go to output in high-resolution format.
But Eris says their program saves the user from having to buy fonts to work with Apple's new TrueType technology. And FontMonger also gives him the creative power to modify his existing font library. For the Computer Chronicles, I'm Nell McCormack.
The HP LaserJet set the standard for high-quality output in the PC world, and the newest generation of HP's laser printers makes life a little bit easier for the font fanatics. Here to explain all of this is Walt Slajewski of Hewlett-Packard. Jan?
You know, Stuart, over the last several years, we've seen a tremendous growth in font packages, font utilities, font management. Instead of we saw PostScript, then we saw Facelift, Adobe Type Manager, now we're seeing TrueType.
And everybody's all confused.
Very confused. We're going to hopefully cut through some of that confusion today by showing some of these packages and discussing them. We're going to start with Hewlett-Packard. And first, Walt, let me ask you, you have something at Hewlett-Packard called PCL, Printer Command Language. Tell us about it. What is that?
Okay. PCL is certainly not new. PCL has been our native printer language in every LaserJet printer that we sold since 1984, and there's well over 3.5 million of those printers in use today. PCL5 is our latest version of that language, and it really brings two significant enhancements to the end user. One is font scaling, and the other is in faster printing graphics.
And is PCL5 built into the LaserJet 3, or is that a cartridge?
All right, now it's completely resident and native to the LaserJet 3, so it's in every LaserJet 3 printer.
All right, now show us what you can do with PCL5 then. You've got WordPerfect up there on the PC. Give us an example.
Yeah, one of the things that our customers asked us for is the ability to have more fonts and more font sizes. So as I said, we've added font scaling to the printer, which is just the ability of the printer to automatically create and print a font at any size that the end user requests. Here I've got WordPerfect loaded, and this is important because having font scaling in the printer is really only half of the solution. You want to ensure that the customer has easy access and transparent access to that font scaling.
Which always isn't the case.
Right, so we work very hard with software developers like WordPerfect and Microsoft to ensure that it's transparent and easy to use.
Yeah.
Let me go ahead and I'll start this document printing. And as that does print, I'll tell you that the LaserJet has 8 fonts that are resident in the printer and completely scalable from 1/4 of a point up to 14 inches tall. Additionally, what we're using today is an accessory cartridge. Now, these cartridges are really nice because they're, number one, very easy to use. You simply plug it into the front of the printer as we've done here. But also what's nice, they provide a variety of different font type styles, and these fonts are now completely scalable as resident fonts and scalable again from 1/4 of a point up to 14 inches tall.
This is an addition to what's in there, though, right? You don't need to have this.
That's
to use
correct.
the printer.
This is an accessory product only. There are scalable fonts built into the printer already.
And we've got the hard copy. Maybe, Jan, you can grab that coming out of the printer.
Okay.
And what do we have here then, Walt?
Well, we have 2 examples, one that we just printed, one that I printed earlier, but they give you an idea of how you can use different type styles on the page, and as well they give you an idea of how you can create text size type as well as very bold, large headings. Now, the beauty of having font scaling in the printer is that if I wanted to make this heading slightly larger or the text slightly smaller, I simply go into my document, change it there, and print again, and the printer takes care of it.
And
from
all
there.
of that's come out just that's a WordPerfect document we're looking at right
Both
there.
of these documents were created out of WordPerfect.
All right, Walt, as Jan pointed out, and you pointed out, of course, you're using PCL as the page description language here. A lot of users know that they want, or have heard that they need PostScript to do certain kinds of graphics work. Suppose you want to use PostScript as the language inside the LaserJet. How do you do that?
Okay. For those of our customers who do require the special printing needs of PostScript, we offer PostScript in an accessory cartridge. Now, this cartridge, when you plug it into the front of the printer, turns the LaserJet into a completely compatible Adobe PostScript printer with the 35 standard fonts that you're used to getting with PostScript.
Okay, and while you were talking, we did that and put the PostScript cartridge in there, so what you're now printing out is something using PostScript as the language, right?
That's correct. I've used WordPerfect to create that document, and we'll take a look at the use again of different types of type on the page and different sizes, and that's part of the beauty of using font scaling within PostScript.
All right, so tell us what we're seeing in this example.
Again, we're seeing a standard business document with a number of different type styles, some very large type, some very small type at the bottom.
Now, is there anything unique to the fact that we did this in PostScript, something we couldn't have done using PCL?
From a font standpoint, there's really nothing unique. PostScript contains its own set of 35 fonts, but you could have produced the same document out of the standard LaserJet 3 using PCL5.
Is there a difference in software compatibility in which you might have to use PostScript as opposed opposed to PCL?
PostScript, of course, has been around for several years now and has pretty wide support for the font scaling features in PostScript. PCL 5 has been on the market for a year. We've worked very closely with vendors, and so we're coming up very closely to matching that same level of compatibility.
Walt, thanks a lot. All right, while laser printers and font manipulation software have brought new power to individual computer users, sometimes you still need the help of a professional graphics shop. We went to visit one such service center, Applied Graphics Technologies, in Foster City, California.
Getting your document printed on a laser writer to look like this requires the work of a pre-press house like Applied Graphics Technologies. Using a powerful photo typesetter, they can print the document with much higher DPI, or dots per inch.
By using a higher DPI, the client gets the advantage of a higher quality end result. If you look at things that have been done on the Linotronic versus the laser writer, you can really see a difference in the quality. You can see the dots much more clearly on the laser writer. And on the Linotronic, you can hardly see that there are dots. It's just more shades of gray rather than dots on a piece of paper.
Applied Graphics sets up documents for its clients on Macintosh computers and runs the files directly to the Linotronic 300. The image setter uses a photographic process to capture the image of the document on photosensitive paper or film at over 1,200 or up to 2,500 DPI. That compares to only 300 on the laser writer. The photographic paper or film from the Linotronic is then run through a film processor and treated with chemicals. Within minutes, the higher resolution document appears. But the quality comes at a cost. Applied Graphics says it may be a while before the home or small business user is able to afford a high-resolution machine.
And the main reason for that is because of the cost of the equipment. It's quite expensive. And also you need to have a photographic processor to run the material through after it's printed. And those kinds of things aren't things that people would expend money for at home.
For the Computer Chronicles, I'm Nell McCormack.
If there is one name which comes to mind when you think about fonts and type, it is Adobe. And here to show us the newest software from Adobe Systems is Ivar Michelsons. Jan?
Ivar, the area of fonts, probably more than any other area in this field, seems to be loaded with confusion. I mean, there's different types. There's bitmaps, and there's scalables, and there's downloadable, and type 1 and type 3. What does this all mean for the user, and how does Adobe Type Manager help the user in that regard?
You're right, Jen. The industry's in a transition now from the older technology of bitmap fonts to outline or scalable fonts. And Adobe's mission is to make that transition as smooth and as easy for the user as possible.
We want to find out how. You've got ATM here, I guess you're going to show us, and a couple other things. Let's start with Adobe Type Manager, and how do you deal with some of these problems using ATM?
All right, Stuart. Let's start with a quick overview of what ATM is. ATM allows Windows applications to display and print great-looking text automatically. It brings scalable PostScript fonts to the PC display and personal printers for the first time.
All right, now show us what you mean. You're using Microsoft Word there in Windows, right?
Yes, let's take a look at what Word looks like today before Adobe Type Manager. Windows provides a few fixed sizes of bitmap fonts, and if you use only those sizes, things look pretty good, but as you vary from them, things start degrading rather rapidly. Here we can see the top line is very large and starts getting jaggy, but even these smaller sizes in the middle, the words scalable PostScript fonts, looks like a different typeface than the other lines, yet this page is all the same face, Times Roman. Things further degrade when one starts using styles, such as italic. Note here that it's simply slanting the italic rather than giving you a true italic, and it's much less legible than before. If we also change to a different typeface, one that is significantly different than Times, say Helvetica, we can't tell that the word manager is in Helvetica and the rest is in Times because the screen representation is so poor.
Right, show us the ATM fix.
Well, before we do that, Stuart, when you print this, things are even worse. On a dot matrix printer, for example, things are still jaggy or entirely the wrong size. As you can see on the screen, the top line is much larger. So the limitations are even worse on the printed output.
So how does ATM fix this?
With ATM, you simply install the product once, then restart Windows and use your application exactly as before, and this is the result. Everything continues to work exactly the same, though. If we use the italic button, we get italic, and note it's a true italic. The design is actually different. If we change the word manager once again to Helvetica, we see that, yes, that really is a sans serif typeface versus the others are not. Even things like color continue to work exactly as before, so we can change this to blue, say, and things work. And best of all, when one prints this page, you now get this sort of output on that same dot matrix printer. A 140 dot per inch dot matrix printer looks really gorgeous.
It is nice.
The same document on a laser jet, a 300 dot per inch laser printer, looks like this.
And even on the laser printer, it's made possible really only by the ATM manipulation.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Via ATM, any display and any printer can now get high quality output, the best possible text that that printer is capable of printing given its resolution capabilities.
Right. Any point size on the fly.
Any point size on the fly, and not just for Windows. ATM is also available under OS/2 and Unix and the Macintosh.
And you've got it up on the Mac right here.
We've got a Macintosh
look.
screen here to the right. The same document. If we changed this back to italic, it really would match. Same fonts being used on both
What's the
platforms.
CD-ROM you've got there?
Now, another interesting thing on the Macintosh is a new product called Type on Call that we've recently come out with. And this is a CD-ROM containing the entire Adobe Type library, almost 1,000 typefaces. And for just $99, a user gets 2 typeface packages, about 8 faces, and the Adobe Type Manager program for the Macintosh. The interesting thing is, in the future, they can unlock additional typefaces for only $50. Now, to somebody who's a type professional, a service bureau or something like that, whose livelihood depends on having type on demand, they can get it literally in a matter of minutes.
So you really have it all sitting there on the CD-ROM. You then have to sort of call up, get the code to get into it.
Exactly.
And boom, you've got that extra
Exactly.
there.
And to the business user who's more interested in price, they can actually get fonts in effect for a lower price by unlocking just the Roman or plain face, and then ATM will synthesize the standard styles, bold, italic, and bold italic.
Ivar, we just have a little bit of time left. I want you to show us Type Align, which is another well-known Adobe product, and show us what that does quickly.
All right, here on the PC, we've got Type Align, which will illustrate some things that ATM can do beyond just scaling type. We can also rotate type. So any angle now looks great because ATM is creating that angle on demand, that rotated type on demand. We can also actually change the shape of the type itself. For example, here we're creating a perspective sort of effect. And by combining these various effects, one can create very elegant, very professional looking logo types and effects, such as this shark logo, where the type is actually in the shape of a shark.
Wow.
And one last exciting development that we just have announced at the Seabold conference and the Windows and OS/2 conference is a new technology called multiple master technology. What that is an extension of these PostScript Type 1 fonts that we've seen that allows a single font not only to represent an infinite variety of sizes and rotations, as we've seen, but also now to represent a variety of weights and widths, as well as sizes. And by sizes, size scaling, I mean
Condensed, expanded, things like that?
That also, but it's also something that's called optical scaling or visual scaling, where a different size master is used for a smaller size than a larger, which is the way things were traditionally done in the days of metal type.
Ivar, thank you very much.
Thank you, Stuart.
All right, Apple has just come out with 2 new laser printers that break old barriers of price and performance, and in just a minute, we'll get to look at them. Stay tuned. Joining us now from Apple Computer is Dwayne Schultz, Product Line Manager for Printers at Apple. Jan?
Dwayne, about a year and a half ago, Apple announced TrueType, and of course now it has finally actually shipped TrueType. The previous couple of segments, we've seen a few different types of type and font technology. Now, is TrueType going to just add to the confusion, or is this going to help the user cut through the confusion?
Well, that's really what we set about doing. Basically, the problem that we've got today is that things happen on your computer that you don't understand when you use type. And here's an example of that. What you can do here is see some typeface as it ships today in kind of a bitmap format. And what happens is as you work with the type, it gets more and more difficult to read, and it does funny things that you really don't understand. What we wanted to do was straighten things out by putting great type into every single Macintosh and into every single personal computer that ships. In fact, we've even licensed it to Microsoft, so it'll be shipping with Windows 3.1 as well. And the benefit that we wanted to get to is that no matter what kind of device you're using, when you use TrueType, your type looks great, and you don't know how it works. We've eliminated all those seams, and we've eliminated all those questions about what should I buy.
So you're blowing up the TrueType version of that, and we see nothing changes there, really.
That's
So
right.
basically it's an outline or a scalable.
It happens to be an outline font technology. Our goal is to have customers not know how any of this works. It should be absolutely transparent. They pull down the font menu, they select a typeface they like well, it looks great on their screens, and it looks great on any kind of printer. So we're really trying to simplify the situation. Of course, it's designed so that it will work with other font technologies if the customer had previously invested in it.
All right, how does this relate to the new printers you've got now, Dwayne?
Well, basically what we've done is looked at TrueType again from a very, very open point of view. First of all, it's very important to look at the capabilities that you can put into a printer with TrueType. So we've introduced the Personal LaserWriter LS with a list price of $12.99 on March 11th, and it produces great type. At the same time, we've introduced a dramatic new kind of printer with the Apple StyleWriter printer. And it does the same kind of thing that the Personal LaserWriter LS will do. So here's an example of the StyleWriter printing out a TrueType page. The benefit of TrueType and printing is that you don't have to build a lot of electronics and intelligence in either one of these printers in order to get great type. And just so this doesn't fall on the floor, we'll pull the little paper catcher out and make sure everything works great.
All right, now what's the technology inside the StyleWriter? How are we printing?
The StyleWriter is a 360 DPI inkjet technology printer. And this entire package is put together to really focus on integration and very, very easy setup and use. And the whole package will be selling at $5.99 list in the United States.
Show us the output now.
Okay. Basically,
You
again,
know, you get great output.
TrueType fonts.
You get a great output. It's it certainly is a nice size. What are you trading off against a laser printer? Are you trading off speed or?
Basically, the trade-off is speed. The way we want our customers to think about it is not to think about PostScript and Quick Draw and font technologies and all these. What they ought to be thinking about and are thinking about is how many pages do I want to print in a typical day? How much money do I have? And we want all of our printers to just be kind of a seamless line that answers those questions. If you want to print a small number of documents, this printer's great. Larger, this is great. Start sharing them, doing PostScript, more people, great. Then we've got the Personal LaserWriter NT and the higher-end performance
Two quick questions. Going back to this other new printer, the Personal LaserWriter LS, apart from the price and so on, what's the new technology inside that printer?
Basically, what we've done is we've rethought the electronics that you have to make a laser printer out of. So we've got very, very dramatic electronics inside where we've shrunk what usually takes a couple of square feet down into a very simple controller board. And what that's allowed us to do is focus on very, very low cost to the customer, but at the same time it does things like, for instance, data compression, and it communicates with the computer at over 900 kilobaud, which is almost 100 times the 9600 baud
For the
line.
SCSI or the serial?
It's a serial port, and both printers are.
And real quickly, last thing, TrueType, do you see that as replacing PostScript? How do these two work in the market together?
We really see them as complementary. The real problem was the people who didn't have PostScript not getting the benefit of great type.
Right.
So, and some of those people are always going to be a little constrained in terms of the money they've got to spend. So what we want to do is build a technology that plays right along with PostScript. We've worked very carefully with our partners at Adobe on this, and we think it's working great as far as the customer's feedback goes.
Dwayne, thanks a lot.
Sure.
And thank you for joining us. Stay tuned now for this week's Computer News.
In the random access file this week, QMS has come out with a laser printer that can print 20 pages per minute at 300 DPI. The QMS PS2000 also offers an optional Ethernet port and a hard drive for storing fonts, but the printer's speed comes at a cost. It starts at $16,000. Macintosh users can now access DBase applications created in DBase 4 for DOS, Unix, or VMS, thanks to a new product from Ashton Tate called DBase 4 Runtime Plus. The program runs most DBase version 1.1 applications on a Mac without modification. Developers can also use the program to create, modify, or debug DBase code for the Mac. A group of 21 computer companies has joined forces to support an advanced microprocessor for workstations from MIPS Computer Systems. The consortium is calling itself the Advanced Computing Environment, and it includes such heavyweights as Microsoft, Compaq, and Digital Equipment. The companies say they will standardize their hardware and software around MIPS RISC processors. Some analysts are saying the consortium is an attempt to weaken the influence of Sun Microsystems. Sun has been trying to make its machines an industry standard by licensing its RISC microprocessor to other computer companies. Time now for this week's software review. Here's Paul Schindler.
Microsoft Windows 3.0 presents one face on the screen and another face when it comes time to print. If you own a dot matrix or inkjet printer, you'll find that Windows provides few fonts, and they aren't very pretty. So a number of vendors are offering add-on programs that enhance Windows fonts. The best one we've seen is Bitstream's Facelift. Now, it's easy to install. Facelift adds 13 high-quality type fonts to Windows applications like Word for Windows, which we're showing you here. And these are scalable fonts, meaning they can be any size from 6 points up to 128 points. The size depends on how much memory you can make available for font generation. Now, that may mean dedicating 512K to this program, but like most Windows programs, a lot of memory is par for the course. Facelift can translate its own type font names to the ones which are resident in your printer with a built-in names table. Aptly named, this program performs plastic surgery on Windows' stodgy fonts. A major facelift for only $100. For the Computer Chronicles, I'm Paul Schindler.
Taking a look at this week's top 10 software titles for the PC, PC Connection reports that Expanded Memory Manager is in the #1 position, with Adobe Type Manager for Windows in second. Third is Entertainment Pack for Windows, followed by Procom Plus. Windows 3.0 is in 5th place. Rounding out the top 10 PC titles are Quicken, WordPerfect 5.1, PC Tools Deluxe, Advanced Utilities, and Antivirus. Trident Technologies is set to release a computer terminal that will let people with hearing or speech impairments conduct two-way conversations over telephone lines. The terminal plugs into a standard modular phone jack. It displays both sides of the conversation on the screen. Other features of the Trident system include electronic mail, conference calling, or an answering machine. The terminal is due to be shipped sometime in the fall. Well, Nintendo is handing out $25 million in game cartridge coupons and will also pay $5 million in fines as part of a settlement with the Federal Trade Commission. The FTC has accused Nintendo of price fixing on its popular Nintendo Entertainment System. Nintendo hasn't admitted guilt but did agree to the settlement. The Japanese game maker will offer the discount coupons to customers who bought a Nintendo game console between June of 1988 and December of 1990. And finally, Microcom has released an updated version of its antivirus software for the Mac called Virex. Version 3.0 will protect Mac users from the HC virus, which affects HyperCard stacks. According to company officials, the virus is supposed to become activated on November 11th of this year. When triggered, the virus plays 2 German folk songs. That's it for this week's Computer Chronicles. I'm Kate McGargy.
Computer Chronicles has been made possible in part by Central Point Software, makers of Central Point Antivirus, a comprehensive program for the detection, removal, and prevention of more than 500 computer viruses. Additional funding has been provided by the Software Publishers Association, which reminds you it's a federal offense to copy software, and by PC Connection and Mac Connection, and by Byte Magazine and Bix, the Byte Information Exchange.